What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to The Haunted Beard. Thank you for joining me. Well, today I want to officially conclude my Final Destination series of reviews with giving you my definitive ranking of all 5 movies. So, without further ado, here we go. So coming in at number 5, dead last, is The Final Destination, aka Final Destination 4. And this is probably not a big surprise, as this seems to be at the bottom of the barrel for the vast majority of people, and understandably so. Look, this thing it's pretty bad. It's just not very good at all, and I think there's a handful of reasons why. Number one is that this thing just feels cheap, and it seems that the budget on this was significantly lower. They also decided to shoot it in 3D, which gives it just a very cheesy, cheap feel to it. And the CGI, due to the 3D effects and just all the computer-generated effects, are just really poor. And the kills really suffer because of this. The kills in this are absolutely the worst in the entire series. And as I mentioned in my review, there is an element of this, of the so bad it's good type, to where, yeah, sometimes you can get enjoyment and entertainment out of it because of how bad it is, and it is funny to laugh at. But that wears off pretty quickly, 20, 30 minutes into the movie, and it's kind of like, all right, I've laughed at it enough, and now it's just bad, and it kind of just gets boring. And it's not even that long of a movie either. It's like 75 minutes without credits. And so, yeah, it's just not a very good time. The dialogue and the acting, the performances are pretty terrible as well. A lot of just cringe moments and just really awful acting and line delivery as well. And so all around, like I said, there is a mild level of entertainment in the so bad it's good type, but outside of that, there's just really not any sort of redeeming qualities in this thing. And so that's why The Final Destination sits at number 5. Next up at number 4 is Final Destination 3, and this one has a pretty good opening sequence with the roller coaster, and this one has a couple good kills in it, and I would say it's at least a tier above Final Destination 4, so it's got a little bit of an improvement. It's not a complete and total disaster. One of the main things about this that I don't like is this one has, I think, the worst character in the entire franchise, and this is a franchise with, by and large, not really many good characters at all, and it's obviously a franchise that's not really even focused on characters, but the character of Frankie Cheeks in Final Destination 3 is just god-awful and is just an absolute pain to watch.
Frankie Cheeks is old school, ladies. What's that? Oh, well, it'd be my honor.
Ew.
Another thing that hinders this for me is the absence of Tony Todd. Yes, I know his voice is in the movie, but his presence, his actual physical presence is missing, and you can feel it. And I know he just has a cameo role in this franchise for the movies that he's in, but those are usually some of the better scenes in the movie. And so this one, I think, is hurt because of his absence for the most part. The kills in Final Destination 3 are okay. There's a couple, like, pretty decent ones, but for the most part, I feel like they're pretty straightforward and kind of obvious. Like, you can kind of see them coming, and you can kind of figure out what exactly is going to happen before it does, at least in a couple instances. And another thing, while I think Mary Elizabeth Winstead's performance is good, it might be the best acting performance in this whole series. She's clearly talented. She does a good job here, given the material she's given. But that kind of feeds into one of the bigger issues that I have with this series as a whole for the most part, and that is a lot of the films take themselves way too seriously. And Final Destination 3 is a really good example of that, as her character spends the majority of this movie crying and being very emotional and very depressed, and it's just so dramatic and heavy. And I just feel like that was just in large part to the detriment. The tone here is just way too sad and depressed and way too serious. It should just be a lot more fun. And so that's one of the main reasons that keeps Final Destination 3 down towards the bottom. So next up at number 3 is the original Final Destination. And while this one, I think, is also hindered due to the overly serious tone and just taking itself way too serious, it does make up for that with some pretty solid kills. It does get a little credit for being the original in the franchise and just kind of having a new idea. And I think the opening sequence with the plane crash is pretty good, given that it's 20 plus years old. Even with the CGI there, a lot of it is practical. I think it holds up fairly well, and it's just got some good kills. Obviously, you've got the kill of the teacher in her house with just the crazy sequence of events that unfolds with the computer and then it lighting on fire and then the knife block falling down on top of her. You've got just the great kill of Amanda Detmer's character where she just gets smashed by the bus.
Then you can just drop fucking dead.
Of course, Seann William Scott's kill is pretty solid as well. I do like the scene that precedes that where they're trying to get the dude out of the car as it's on the train tracks. Pretty good suspenseful scene there. And so overall, Final Destination it's fairly good. It's enjoyable. It's got some good kills. I do think it takes itself too seriously, but it sits right in the middle for me at number 3. And now these final two I would put in a tier above the rest. These I would say I genuinely enjoy. I consider them good, and I have a pretty solid time with them. So, number 2 for me is Final Destination 2. And this was one that I was very happy because the first half of it I felt like they were still kind of getting the tone wrong. It was still taking itself too seriously, but then they kind of shift around into the latter half of the movie. Once the characters decide that they have to have a conversation with a pregnant woman to make sure that she has her baby, as new life is going to somehow offset all the death and everything, they start realizing how absurd and ridiculous this whole thing is, and I feel like the movie at that point really kind of lightens up and starts becoming a little more self-aware. And also too, the redeeming quality for any of these has to do with how much you like the kills, right? I mean, we're really here first and foremost for the kills, and Final Destination 2's kills are pretty great. The opening sequence is, I would say, iconic at this point, and it still holds up quite well. This is a pretty fantastic opening sequence, as there's just all sorts of mayhem that's unleashed on the highway, and I like that they go the practical route here. Yes, the big old tree logs are CGI, but everything else is practical, or at least seems to be practical to me, as you've got real car crashes, real explosions, and just the sounds of it all, the insanity of it all. It's a really great scene. One of my favorite scenes in the entire franchise is Tim's kill, where he goes to the dentist and then gets flattened by the gigantic pane of glass after you think he makes it out of there unscathed. And one of the things that Final Destination 2 does, and why its kills are so good, is that it throws you a lot of curveballs, and you don't know how the character is going to meet their ultimate demise. And so it just throws a lot of fake outs at you and just builds some good suspense, and it's just a whole lot of fun. The scene later on in the movie where you get the deaths of Kat and Rory, that whole sequence of events is just fantastic, with the fireman going in there to save Kat with the jaws of life, and he triggers the airbag and she gets impaled right through the face with the PVC pipe, and then of course the barbed wire fence slicing Rory into a bunch of pieces. It's just fantastic. And so while the film itself regarding the tone is kind of 50-50, the kills here make up for it quite well, and that's why Final Destination 2 sits at number 2. But coming in at number 1 is Final Destination 5, and man, I just have quite a good time with this. It's a whole lot of fun. I think the opening disaster sequence on the bridge is right in line with the opening sequence in Final Destination 2. It just kind of has this big epic scope to it, and it's just really great. The variety of kills in the bridge scene is just awesome. I love when the chick falls and gets impaled by the boat. It's fantastic. And while I don't think the sort of self-aware humor is taken to the degree that I think this franchise probably deserves, I think Final Destination 5 does the best job of sort of being self-aware, realizing how, again, ridiculous and crazy and absurd this whole thing is. And it's just a whole lot of fun and entertaining. And there isn't a bad kill in this entire movie. I think Candace's kill might be my favorite kill scene in the entire series. Again, it's got a great setup to it. It's got nice suspense. It's got good fake outs. I like just the whole buildup with her on the balance beam with the screw sticking up there. It's just got really good suspense. I think it's a fantastic scene. And then the actual kill itself is just brutal and gnarly. Absolutely phenomenal kill scene. And I like kind of the new rule that they set up here by saying that in order for them to defeat death, they have to take a life in order to get that person's years. And so it provides just kind of a new element to where now one of the main characters, Peter, becomes a killer, and he goes out and attempts to kill some of the other characters, namely Sam and his girlfriend. And so I kind of just like that element. It's no longer death trying to kill people. Now you have one of the characters in the movie trying to kill people. And so I like that whole element there. I also like that Tony Todd's back. His scene is a highlight for me. I just like his screen presence. He does a really good job with just the few minutes that he's on screen. And then, of course, the ending. It's a pretty solid ending. It's a nice little twist. It's unexpected, and it's just a whole lot of fun. And you get to see the plane crash sequence all over again. Everything kind of comes full circle and ties you back around to the original. And so there's just a whole lot of fun to be had in Final Destination 5. It's got great kills. It's got just kind of a nice, big, sort of epic scope to it, and it's got a pretty killer twist at the end there that I think is pretty fun. So that's my official ranking for the Final Destination franchise. Hit me up down below, though. Let me know your ranking. Would love to hear from you. That is all I got for you today. Like always, if you like videos like this, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. And I will see you next time on The Haunted Beard.